Interesting lighting in the background.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. You are in our romantic space. You're in our bedroom.
Literally.
So, hello. So, I'm Jodi Reynosa. I am the host of Guided, helping you navigate your divine journey. And this is my husband. This is Will. This is also AKA Johan Fritz. So, as many of you may know, he is a specialist in the secret space program. So, many of you have seen probably a lot of his videos all across YouTube.
Yeah.
So, he's kind of a star when it comes to the secret space program. So, we actually have a healing practice, and
Hey,
it
guys.
focuses a lot on, hi, thanks for joining us, everyone. It focuses a lot on helping SSP vets heal, but not just
Among
those.
other communities.
I was just going to say, among other communities, not just those people, but also people in all walks of life who have a serious stock in their own spiritual healing. So I do, though, want to start out by thanking all of my subscribers around the world for supporting me. And I have so many people who around the world have just really kind of been on this journey with me, on this labor of love. And I started back in 2019, and I was in Sedona, Arizona. And basically, Spirit said, you're going to have a show. It's going to be called Guided. And at the time, I was reading Dave Morehouse's book, Psychic Warrior. And he, as many of you know, he was.
Lighting effect right here, by the way.
I know, right? It's like, doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah, sorry. I'm a Libra. I see shiny things. My brain guy goes.
Our little ADD. We're like, glitter.
Yeah. Lights.
I know. We're like, okay, get back on track here. Let's do like large screen, by the way. There we go. Okay, much better. All right. So where are we? Okay. So I was on my way to Sedona.
You're reading Dave Morris's book.
Yes, I was actually on Audible, so I was listening, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be interviewing people like him. And not just in the spiritual community, but also people who are really involved in the healing community. So I was like, okay, awesome, let's do it. I launched my show, and my first episode was actually with Sean Stone. So really awesome guy. His dad, of course, has done movies like JFK and a lot of movies that involve disclosure. Yeah. So it was awesome. I've had some incredible guests. And now this guy, my hubby, this is the first time that we've actually gone live together on YouTube. So this is so fun. And we're going to be doing actually a series on SSP stuff, on my journey in the SSP program, his journey, many of you know, but there's other little tidbits that you don't know.
Healing divine counterparts, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. But, you know, although he has gone into his near-death experience, there are lots of nuances that are so beautiful that many of you don't know. Exclusive parts that I'm going to be talking about with him. So in fact, maybe we'll give them a sneak peek in just a little bit.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
Because it's so neat. I don't want to make you guys wait. It's so awesome. And I know we've been telling everybody for almost a year that we're going to have this series. And I just want to say, let's just kind of start tonight with a little bit of it. Okay. But I just want to say again, thank you to my subscribers. And those of you who have not subscribed, those of you who are new to my channel, Jodi's Gems, subscribe. I would love for you to be part of this community. And I'm going to be having my husband on a lot because we do things a lot together. And, you know, again, our healing practice is called Services with Jodi and Will.
Yeah. If you guys haven't looked on Facebook yet, you can type in Services JW, also on Instagram as well.
Yep.
And we're both on there. I have some services and Jodi has some services we both kind of exclusively offer, but we do support each other on there. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of services we both jointly do.
Yep.
So
we each kind of have our niche and our specialties.
Yeah, but we have a bunch of stuff we also kind of collaborate on. Yep. Like when we do services, regardless of what we do, typically we collaborate. But it's something like, for example, Jodi's really good at doing shamanic journey stuff. People come to me for SIA stuff.
But yet we're still involved in those services together. Yeah. So for instance, you know, he might give a service and I'll say, oh, but I'm getting the spiritual download about this. And then I'll do my shamanic journey. And then we'll be on a call with a client and he'll be like, oh, I'm getting this about, you know, her doing this or him doing this. And so it's really awesome. I love the collaboration. Okay. So We are getting somebody saying, yeah, I love listening to both of you and y'all's SSP experiences. Awesome. Thank you so much. And then, hello, guys. And Anne Marie says, hearts, hearts, hearts. Thank you. Yep. Peace. Love it. So the other thing I was going to say about guided is for those of you who didn't get to watch maybe my episode that just aired,
which was actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. I had Sky Nelson Isaacs. He was on for the second time. He has a book called Living in Flow, and his other book is called Leap to Wholeness. He talks a lot about wholeness, healing and wholeness, and he talks a lot about synchronicities. And so that's kind of one of the first things we want to talk about is synchronicities.
Yeah.
And there's just so many. In fact, we had one of our clients and good friends, Mahip Gill from India, who was on the live chat, and he talked about how he was seeing 17 and 144 like all throughout today. And, you know, there's like divine synchronicities, whether it's numbers, whether it's people in your life, whether it's just that divine orchestration that happens.
Another word for synchronicities, by the way, is called quantum echoes.
Oh, yeah.
People talk of this idea that as things happen up there or down here, we're seeing as above, so below, and sometimes literally.
Yep.
So, yeah, and synchronicities can also be stuff like waiting for the perfect time when spirit wants you to do something. Yep. Some people call that synchronicity. Some of us call it, divine timing.
Yep. I love divine timing sometimes. Because sometimes I have to be super patient, right?
If you do not have patience, it can suck. If you do have patience, divine timing is great.
So when I see the divine timing in retrospect, and you're like, oh, I see how all of that came together. That was awesome. That was such a miracle. I loved that. Thank you, divine creator, right? Then we love divine timing and divine orchestration. When we're in the thick of it, though, and in that journey of like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I don't see how all of this is going to come together. And you're kind of in flux, like we're kind of in flux in a few areas.
Yeah.
That can be really tough. And that is when you are meditating and praying and really going within and doing that inner work. And that's what we love to do with our clients as well.
Listening to the little voice then.
Oh, yeah. That still small voice.
Yeah.
But what are some of the synchronicities, in fact, that you have been aware of lately?
So we currently are trying to figure out where we're going.
That's kind of the in flux area.
Work, where we're going to be living temporarily, and with our services business, we can technically do that anywhere, but the issue for us is where do we really want to reside, right?
We have a few places that we're looking at,
and that's really hard. If you're someone who is not in tune with your gut, is not in tune with spirit, that can be really, really difficult because you're thinking, okay, not only do I just open up a business, but now I have to like figure out where I'm living. So that's the first one that comes to my mind. Synchronicity wise, for example, we just went and saw the Dune movie.
Oh, love that.
The latest version of it.
It's so good, you guys. If you haven't seen it yet,
so
definitely go get tickets.
And we're going to be talking a little more about this in a little bit, speaking of synchronicities. But we were at the movie, and some members of our church, like, we didn't realize that they were like sci-fi geeks. So our church is a little conservative. So we were at the movie, and we're like, okay, this is something that we can just talk about amongst ourselves. And of course, we get out the door, and there's like the leader of our church, and some other people with him. And we're like, what in the hell? So that was kind of a weird synchronicity. Another synchronicity for me this week was I was working on a project actually for our church, and got that project done, and then I let the guy in charge know, the bishop know it was done, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, that's awesome, perfect timing. So it's like, it's like stuff like that where it's like, you do something, you get it done, and all of a sudden it's like the other person was actually thinking about it while you were doing it,
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of these happening, but the question is, how are we listening to spirit in our gut, and how are we getting those things aligned so that when we're dealing with divine creator, we're working on his plan, his timeline, not ours. And the problem is that many people I see are working on their own timelines, not the divine creators.
Yeah. And also the divine creator's will versus our will. And I
Think
think when we try
about,
to align that, we get really happy. We feel
well,
fulfilled and peaceful.
think about this, right? And you talk about like the Garden of Gethsemane, right? I don't mean to be preachy, but when you think about what was going on in the Garden of Gethsemane, Christ was essentially saying, "Not my will, but Thy will. But please let this cup pass from me." Right? And he already knew that he was going to have to drink from the cup. So, metaphorically speaking, and this is kind of like the same thing when it comes to our own personal lives, right? We see certain decisions sitting before us, and we're like, "Man, I really don't want to do that. God, please don't let me have to go through this." And we already know we're going to go through it. It's just, it's having the patience and the wherewithal to kind of trust that our divine creator is putting us in that space to actually work through whatever that is.
Yeah. In fact, one of the things before this live I was trying to think of was Michael Bernard Beckwith. He's one of my favorites.
He's good.
And he talks about asking empowering questions, especially when you're in the thick of it, right? If you're in an uncomfortable situation in life and getting comfortable in the discomfort, one of the empowering questions that he poses and asks us to pose to ourselves is, what is this situation basically trying to have us emerge into? So, what is trying to emerge from this situation? So, if we're in a difficult situation, what is trying to emerge? If we had to be in that situation for the rest of our lives, not that we're going to, but if we had to be in that situation for the rest of our lives, what possibly would we want to glean from that situation? Or what would we ask for to be able to have the perseverance or the endurance? So we might ask for strength. We might ask for things that, instead of asking to change the situation, what would we ask for?
Another way to restate this, right, would be to say, for example, what is this situation trying to teach me? What is the universe
Hmm.
trying to teach me about this situation?
Hmm.
What is it in me that I have to develop or work on that I need to get buttoned down to move past this in the future so it doesn't replicate again? And this is what we see a lot of times in our clients where, Jody and I will get these clients and they'll be like, this keeps happening over and over and over again. It's like, well, okay, what's the lesson you're not getting?
Hmm.
This is the
Yeah.
reason why repetition like this occurs, because the universe is trying to present you a lesson and you're either not acknowledging the fact the lesson's there, which happens a lot, or B, more importantly, when that lesson gets represented again in front of you, which is what the universe does, you'll get it buttoned down the first time and learn it. And the universe will be like, let's just give it to you one more time to make sure you have it.
Or if you're not graduating from that lesson, oftentimes you're focusing on the wrong things. You're focusing on the external instead of what you're supposed to internally learn from it
So
so that you can graduate from
I'll,
that.
I'll give an example from my own personal experience on this front, right? Um, about 2 years ago, I was going through some real anger issues. And I had a situation happen where I was driving to the shop I was working at the time, and this guy pulled out in front of me. Now, at this moment, I had already went through this lesson twice. So, and I knew that I went through the lesson twice. That's the important part here. I recognized it for what it was.
Kudos to Will for
I
that.
recognized it
He
for what it
recognized
was.
it.
Um, and I told the universe, like, look, I'm getting this lesson buttoned down. I've got it. I'm not going to overreact because I was driving, and that's where for me is like not good. Um, so the universe puts this person right in front of me, and I'm driving speed limit. And the whole way down this road till I get to the interstate, which is like 10 miles, the person's flying me the bird the entire time. And I've done nothing wrong. I'm
Wow.
not tailgating. I'm not on his rear end. I'm like maybe, 100 feet behind him. I've got cars lined up behind me. We're all going the same speed as the guy who's flying us the bird. And yeah, and I didn't get mad about it. I looked at it and said, okay, universe, you're trying to teach me in this third attempt not to get angry while I'm behind the wheel. Got it. I didn't react. The person did react. I went to the shop. No big deal. I didn't. And the other thing about this too, by the way, is a lot of times you'll know when you have a lesson buttoned down when the stimuli does not cause you to internalize what's going on. So that's very important to think about in your head when you're going through these moments where the universe is sending this stimulus to you about this particular lesson, if you're no longer internalizing it, it's healed. Meaning
that's a good sign.
Meaning the trigger is no longer causing you to feel triggered. You're basically inoculated from it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part that most people miss in terms of like the healing journey, I think, is that they go through this whole process of like, well, I had this lesson learned. I have it buttoned down. Well, if you had it buttoned down, you wouldn't be getting triggered and upset right now.
Right. Exactly. And oftentimes we think like, well, we thought we already cleared this. We thought we were already healed. Why is it showing up? Exactly. Why is it showing up again? Yeah.
Damn onion.
I know. So something else that I feel comes along in the healing journey is the question of reflection. Okay.
Introspection.
Mirroring, reflection. So, and we've talked about this before, but I'll say it again. If you are blaming anything on the external, you might want to pause.
Look internal.
And look internally, because everything is a reflection, right? Everything on the external is a reflection of the internal. So ask yourself, what is mirroring me right now? Okay. Any natural disaster that we have around us or in the world, any political action or disagreement or whatever can actually always be a message to us internally. Mm-hmm. Well, how is this affected? Like there was just a lot of flooding and misheaval, I guess, in the San Francisco area in California, which I'm from Northern California.
We have tons of friends there. We're sending you guys prayers.
Yes. A lot of comfort.
It's a mess out there.
Positive energy and love. Yeah. But to me, I always look at, okay, where is there flooding, emotional flooding going on in my life? Is there anything overflowing?
So let's talk about
or bleeding into.
Let's talk about this just for a minute, right?
Yeah. Is there anything bleeding into one area, into another area that I need boundaries for? You know?
What is emotional flooding? Emotional flooding is when you have an emotional reaction to a situation and you feel so strongly about it emotionally that you do not realize and cannot control what's coming out of your pie hole.
That's one way of putting it, right?
I'm just being blunt because the people are going to get how blunt I'm being right now. Okay. I'm just saying what happens. Okay. So I'm speaking from my own experience here. There are moments where I definitely feel emotionally flooded. I'm sure you've had some of those too.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times the emotional flooding either gets caused by the triggers that we have, or it's caused by the trauma we have. Mm-hmm. The TNT, right?
Which is the wounding.
Trauma and triggers.
Yep. Which is the wounding. And then your thoughts that are wrapped around the wounding.
And the fear of being hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
So all this stuff comes up, right? And when it comes up, what happens a lot of times in our subconscious brains, we're like, oh God, I have to deal with this again. And the minute your brain starts to ramp up, basically what happens is communication-wise, everything else shuts down. That's flooded.
Mm-hmm.
When all your communications stops being two-way and it's now you projecting out of your pie hole and nothing's coming in, you're flooded.
And if you go back to your old ways, you'll either retreat.
Yeah.
You'll do like the silent treatment. You'll go within and you'll isolate.
Introvert.
Yeah, one of those things.
Or like some people do, you may go completely extrovert and go off on somebody and run up to their car and get crazy, which is in today's day and age, by the way, let me just state this. There's a reason why they have Karens on YouTube. If you're a Karen,
shout out to the Karens.
Shout out to the Karens. If you're a Karen and you're on YouTube, you were triggered. You were flooded.
And seek us. Okay, we'll help you.
You were triggered and you were flooded.
You need some inner child work, and it's okay. We have some meditations for those.
Secondly, and more importantly, it's in situations like that where you actually see people. Those people, the Karens we talked about, right? All of them feel like they're not being heard.
Yeah, it's very true. That's the root and the core of that.
That's the core wounding. They feel like they've never been heard.
Yep. So let's look at this comment really quick. Yeah, I definitely missed the lesson. I don't get triggered easily, but when I get cut off while keeping my distance and breaking, it makes me mad. Yeah. Oh, we get that. Yeah. For sure.
but see, here's the thing, right? So this is exactly the universe trying to work with us, right? Trying to teach us patience. Always take a lesson the universe is trying to teach you and figure out what is the positive lesson that's trying to teach me in this, right? So in my case, my anger was all about me being impatient with me and other people, me being what's the word I want to use here? Me not giving myself tolerance, me not giving myself forgiveness, me not giving myself love or acceptance, and all of that is what comes out when I get angry. And that you have to start with yourself first, right? So Gandhi talks about this idea of in order to change the world, you have to change the internal world first, right? We see the same thing with Hermes Trismegistus. We hear the same thing with the Bible. We hear the same thing in the Quran, the Talmud. All these books talk about this idea of in order to change the external landscape, we have to change the internal landscape first.
And then
Right?
also, what is underneath the anger? Any emotion that you go through, always ask, is there anything underneath that?
And what
Because oftentimes there might be hurt, there might be sadness.
That's a really good idea, by the way.
Hmm.
So what my wife's trying to say is that when you look at anger, we're talking about anger earlier, right? Or even just being upset and hurt, right? So like, okay, so for those of you who don't know, yes, my wife and I, we both go to therapy together and independently.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
And
because we all have blind spots, right?
and one of the things that we've learned is that we always have to ask the question. So if Jody's upset about something, or if I'm upset, we'll ask the question, okay, what is actually underneath of the anger? What is causing you to actually feel angry? Many times you'll have feelings of shame, guilt, hurt. You'll have all this other stuff going on under the surface that hasn't been processed or dealt with yet.
For me personally, more times than not, it's hurt or
Mm.
fear.
Yep, fear can do it too.
And that's actually one of the things that Sky Nelson Isaacs, my episode that we just had premiering, he talked a lot about the fact that people cannot live in flow and they cannot allow synchronicities to come into their lives because of fear. Fear is the obstacle. The obstacle is just, it's that fear. It's
Yeah.
that fear that gets in the way. However, I will point out something though. The book, The Obstacle is the Way, is a fantastic book, okay? Because our obstacles and our challenges actually allow us to up level. So if we go through the obstacle instead of trying to bypass it or ignore it or deny that it's there, that's not going to help us grow.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the other thing I would say in this situation too, and this is something that for us, admittedly, for anyone, I think, but for us in our case, it's been a tough lesson for us. Is it's also teaching us a lot of times how do we be vulnerable,
Hmm.
and when you're not, it is very difficult for guys especially, but for people in general to be emotionally transparent about what they're really thinking and feeling and how they're really thinking and feeling it, and that is tough, especially in the heat of the moment when you're with someone you love and your wife is like, but why are you feeling this way? And you're like, and you're trying to like, okay, do I flood or do I just calm my shit down for a minute and do I like talk about where I'm actually at in here? And that is really, really tough in the heat of the moment. Um, that's something I'm still learning.
He is doing a fantastic job though. So
And the thing
talking
is,
about he has come such a long way from the time that we met to now. Like, oh my gosh, he's a different man. It's amazing.
but I will say this too, right? So this is something that for the guys that will be watching this video, and for the guys that are watching, I strongly recommend trying to develop an emotionally intelligent lexicon about how you talk about your emotions. I know that sounds super mushy, it sounds super stupid, but it is something you have to do in order for you to get really in touch with where you're at in your heart space. Because without it, what I've found so far, at least through when we've been chatting with our therapists and whatnot, without that verbiage, it's like you can't talk about your truth.
Yeah.
You can't activate your throat chakra. You can't
Mhm.
you can't actually like speak to what is actually your truth in the situation, and that's the real issue here. I feel like men specifically have had the ability to speak their truth stripped away from them.
Mhm. from a young age too.
They've been raped of that.
It's also people will get rewarded, guys and girls, but especially guys. And I've heard it time and time again.
Yeah,
It's
strong and silent type, right?
right. Or like, oh, even little boys, oh, get up. Oh, you didn't cry. Oh, you're such a brave boy, And it's like they're rewarded for not showing emotion.
Right.
And it's like, that is so sad to me. Parents need to actually, in my opinion, I feel like parents need to guide their children to show that emotion. And like, my sister's great at this. She has now 3. She just had her 3rd baby. She talks to her children and she is observant, and she voices that observance. Like, she'll say, if they get upset or they're crying, she's like, I see that you're really upset. Or I hear that you're angry. Instead of like judging that emotion, she just observes it, because that acknowledges that she hears and sees them. And so it empowers the child, but it also lets them know, like, I'm safe and I'm secure to show my emotion.
And see, this is the other side of this for guys too, right? So when we were talking with our therapist, one of the things, and by the way, Matt and Echo are both freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So they are lifesavers and are relationship savers. And obviously we're doing the work, but I really appreciate what they've done for us. But the point is that I think for guys specifically, what happens a lot of times, they do not feel safe talking about what's in here because, and I've said this before in other videos, we spend most of our lives in this weird emotional desert, no one else out there. And the minute we get on somebody else, and we've had these, however many years of us internalizing our emotions, all of a sudden they're like,
the programming.
Can you tell me how you feel about ... And you say something, and sure, in here it sounds great, but the minute it comes out of your mouth, you're like, whoa, that didn't sound good. That's where we have to really think about the emotional lexicon that I talked about earlier.
Yeah. When you're sharing your emotions, especially as a couple, it invites vulnerability. And that's what Will just pointed out.
Yeah. And it's tough.
And that vulnerability, though,
but vulnerability is truth,
allows not only truth, but intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And you want that intimacy.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of relationships lack that intimacy. And when you don't have that intimacy and that vulnerability, you're going to just grow apart inevitably. And that's unfortunate. One of the things I wanted to bring up, though, there is a video that I do with an awesome musician, an awesome gal. Her name's Jennifer Sterling. And she's actually the sister of Lindsey Sterling, who's, world famous violinist. And talk about vulnerability. She and I get very vulnerable. So that is a good model of vulnerability. I had just gone through a breakup, and I just learned that I had 2 tumors on my pituitary gland, and I just was having the worst day. And you can see it, you can hear it. But I wanted to still do that episode because I thought, what? Somebody out there needs to still hear this, because they need to know what it's like to hear somebody express their truth. Because I feel like I'm allowing people to give themselves permission to share their truth as well, instead of bypass it or, be like, oh, you know what, I'm okay. No, I'm good. No, it's important to share your truth.
And she got the chance to see both of us the day after we got married.
Yeah, that's true.
We went to Sedona, we got married, and
then we went hiking with them.
Hiking with her and her husband, his name Mike, right?
Yeah.
Mike and her brother, his name Vlad.
Yeah.
The 5 of us all went out with their little dog.
Yep.
We hiked through Sedona, which is freaking awesome.
Yep.
And she got a chance to see Jodi actually in a much more healed state. So, yeah, it was good.
It was really good. Yeah. But in speaking of guided, for those of you, again, who haven't subscribed to the channel, would love for you to do that. Not only am I going to have Will on talking about, his experiences, but also there are some awesome interviews that I've had from people all over the world. And these are high profile guests who are healers themselves. Mm-hmm. But, we also have had Anthony Zender on there. I've had
put Carol on there. Not a video with Carol, right? Carol.
Yeah, Carol Obley was on there.
Mm-hmm.
She's a psychic medium.
Yep.
She talks about people who have crossed over and the messages that she's brought over to loved ones. Like I said, Dave Morehouse, who, he was a former CIA remote viewer for Stargate. Sean Stone, I mentioned. Tolic. Okay, really
From the Andromeda
interesting.
Council.
Really interesting from the Andromeda Council. So he has some really fascinating information, especially about the Zetas and the Draco.
Yeah.
And some of the
different viewpoint than mine.
Yeah, different viewpoint, but nevertheless,
but still nonetheless valid.
Very interesting and intriguing. Also, Tom Dongo, world famous ufologist.
Tom's good.
Really interesting experiences that he's had on like Bradshaw Ranch and other areas in Arizona. So lots of really intriguing guests on Guided. So feel free to, take a watch, take a listen, give some comments, tell me what you think, subscribe. And then of course, we're going to have a series on there with us doing more.
Yep.
But we just wanted to come on here and say hi and introduce you to Will, and as a couple, us. We also want to talk a little bit more about some upcoming things with services with Jodi and Will. So as many of you already know, we are getting QHHT certified. For those of you who don't know what QHHT is, it's quantum healing hypnosis therapy.
Right.
And that is a modality that was basically founded by Dolores Cannon. She has passed, but
her daughter Julia is now running it.
Julia Cannon is now running it. And it's a fascinating modality. It allows you to go within and through your higher self access a lot of information and truth about past lives, about parallel lives, about your future, about things with healing, things that you need to do to completely heal your life.
It's also interesting too, when you listen, we're going through the classes right now.
Yeah, we're going to be certified.
You'll be certified soon. And it's interesting going through the videos and listening to the recordings of people who've been through these sessions. Yeah. Hello, Diana. It's interesting listening to that.
Thanks for joining us, Diana.
It's interesting listening to that audio because when you listen to the audio, you hear things from the people who are being recorded.
Oh yeah.
It's like this lady, the one lady that she had on there when she first started chatting with her, she had this very, very small, very quiet kind of voice.
Mm-hmm.
The minute she started talking she got past the personality and actually started talking to the subconscious,
mm-hmm.
her voice immediately changed to this like, "Hello, I'm here,"
like authoritative.
Yeah, it's like whoa. It was really interesting because
and the authoritative SC or subconscious started speaking in third person.
Right.
So like say I was the client, right? Under hypnosis, and say my SC comes in, right? My subconscious, all of a sudden third person would be like, Jodi needs to do this. She is not listening to this. So it's interesting. So, the client might say, I, experienced this in this past life, or I experienced this, or, oh, I'm doing this here. And then all of a sudden, when they're in subconscious mode and accessing that higher iteration, that higher oversoul, and accessing that higher information, whoa. It's like third person. It's like
energy changes.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really fascinating. Yeah. So I'm going to pose this to you guys, since it looks like we have several people on right now. Okay. You guys tell me what your thoughts are on this. Will and I, we were kind of debating this in a friendly way. Okay. But our therapist, Matt, actually said, why don't you guys pose this to, your community and see what they have to say about it? Okay. So part of our training for QHHT, okay, we are to do 125 hours of taking people under, hypnosis, and that will help us get certified. So
the way it breaks down is basically 25 sessions, average. That's 25 sessions. 10 of those are going to be free.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do with that, right? How do we offer that? Because we both have to do a certain number of sessions ourselves. So that's the real question here, right? So
here's my fear. I'm just gonna blatantly say it, okay? I have found that there are certain people in certain communities who have been very judgmental. And yes, right, I should just be like, who cares? Who cares about those people? But I feel like in this training mode, they're going to judge me even harsher if they're like, oh, well, she's that QHHT practitioner that did this, this, and this. But I'm like, well, wait a second. I was in my training mode, right? I'm not actually a true QHHT practitioner yet. I was just in training. So that's my fear, to like offer this free, or for a love offering is what they're calling it.
Yeah, do a love
to
offering.
to like our social media type community, or SSP community, or my guided community or whatever.
See,
Will, on the other hand,
Anne went right exactly what I said.
what?
She said, put it out there and let the universe bring the appropriate people to you.
Oh, I love that answer, Anne Marie. Thank you. Okay, so I feel like a lot of my concern is based in fear.
Anne Marie, right here. Thank you.
Give it up to Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, you guys. Thank you. See, that's why we love you guys. You help us out too. But again, I knew this. I knew that this was based in fear for me. So I'm like, I don't know. I feel so uncomfortable.
So let's just touch on these two last comments really quick. Diane says, do it by donation, ? I don't think you'll be badly judged. And then Anne Marie says, offer to the SSP first.
See, that's what Will wanted to do. And I'm like, go for it, babe. Totally do that for you. But I don't know if I'm comfortable with that yet. Yeah. So we'll see. But I totally appreciate your comments and your suggestions.
We're throwing some thoughts out there, kind of seeing how it's received.
Yeah. We're coffee tabling, as our therapist says. Yes, throwing ideas on the coffee table without judgment.
Yeah. So yeah.
So that's awesome. I'm glad that we were able to get some comments and solutions and resolutions and ideas from you guys. Thank you. What was our next item on here that we were going to talk about? We were also going to talk about some SSP stuff, because one of the things that we're finding with our community is that everybody wants to talk SSP, right? That, at least that's what it seems to Will and I so far.
Okay.
Well, no? Do you disagree?
I think it's a mix of stuff.
Do you think it's a mix?
Hello, Sophie. Hello.
Hi, Sophie. Long time no hear. Right. That's what I think. But
I think, okay, so if I'm being completely honest, yes, there is a large amount of questions and things posed on that particular subject. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, it gets aimed at me. And the thing is, what everyone seems to forget is that my wife is as much of an experiencer in this as I am. So it's like she just hasn't put her testimony out there, which we're going to do. We're going to do this, by the way.
I haven't quite yet.
Just so we're clear, okay? She is going to put her testimony out on the inner tubes, the interweb, and we're going to put that out there because I think it's important. It's just as important for people to hear my testimony as it is for them to hear her testimony.
Sophie, yes, we do need to catch up.
Hey, Heinha.
Heinha, hello. Thank you for your support and thank you for watching the premiere with Sky Nelson Isaacs.
Thank you for supporting us.
Yes. What I will say, though, to Will's comment, though, is that I feel like a lot of the SSP community knows Will, knows his testimony, knows about the videos he's done and everything like that. So I feel like it's almost natural to, target questions to SSP. For me, I've come from like the healing, consciousness, kind of like
but here's the
divinity
thing, right?
alignment,
Here's the funny part about the
type of communities.
Here's the funny part about this whole conversation, right? So Jodi and I both have had healing businesses in our own businesses way before.
Yeah. Way before we met, way before SSP stuff.
Way before we met, way before the SSP stuff, way before we got together, way before we got married.
Yeah.
So it's kind of laughable to me to a certain degree when people say, well, you started off in the SSP stuff first. I'm thinking, what? I had like a dog look like, brr? Because that is not factually supported.
And those of you joining us, welcome to the bedroom.
Yes, welcome to the bedroom. Ooh, lighting.
Get up close and personal.
So, again, just so we're clear, the facts support the fact that we've had our own healing businesses, now our joint business, way longer than we've ever had the SSP stuff going on. But the thing is that I think the SSP stuff is hitting kind of a nerve with some people because so many people, I believe, have been used in these programs. And
Yeah. Yeah.
part of what our core element in our business is, right, is that we want to, there's certain communities that we know need our help and need your guys' help too. Just,
Absolutely.
just so we're clear.
And thank you for those of you who want to help and who are helping. We
this
really
is not
appreciate it.
this is not just us doing this. It's not.
Mhm.
We have a community of people that we support. They support us. We support them, and we try our best trying to bring awareness to that. We have a whole community of people that have been traumatized, triggered. They've been targeted. I mean, all the T's, right? Jokingly enough, the T's, yeah. But they've had all this stuff happen to them, and it's like, okay, fine. So how do we help them? That's where my brain goes. I'm not. That's what I'll say. I don't want to just outright dismiss their feelings, I guess. I understand that people go through this stuff. I don't internalize that stuff the same way. I don't internalize it the way a lot of other folks do. There's a lot of folks that will see something where they get traumatized or triggered and immediately internalize it. And then they externalize it once they get angry.
So for instance, let's just unpack that for a second. So internalize it to the point where they are marinating in it constantly. So you're constantly bringing it up. You're constantly talking about it. And that's more than just being curious about it. It's more than just like recalling your memories. It's more than just like talking to somebody about like, hey, do you recall this? Hey, do you remember this? Or, oh, I had this experience. It's literally marinating it to the point where you are re-traumatizing yourself.
So
on top of that, then, like Will's saying, you want to then take a third person in the external or a third party and blame them. Whether it's government, whether it's, that community or whatever.
You could throw, let's just go down the list of people, a real short, quick list of people that typically get blamed regardless, right? We always have the Masons, the Knights Templar, the government, CIA, NSA, and any other
all the
alphabetical soup agencies always get blamed. Now, I'm not saying some of those groups aren't to blame.
Right, or have been infiltrated somehow.
Let's be clear. Some of you motherfuckers out there do some shady shit.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We know who you are.
We know who you are. We see you.
We can remote view you.
We can remote view you.
And we have.
And we have. But the point is, that's not what we're drilling down on here. The point is, what we're talking about is there are people in the community who, instead of working on why they're feeling triggered and actually dealing with the trigger, the core emotional hurt, right? The core wound, instead of dealing with that, they want to lash out and go after somebody else, which is basically, in my opinion, that's like emotionally bypassing.
And they don't want to connect the dots to, okay, so this happened to me. I was in the programs. So what now? Okay, let's talk about my healing and let's talk about the quantum echoes of how it affects this realm. Because this is the most important realm right now for our healing, to then integrate all of those parts of ourselves, all of those experiences into the now, because we need to focus on right now.
A good example of what I'm trying to talk about here is this. Let's bring it down to brass tacks, as I like to call it, right?
Yes.
For those of you who have seen my testimonies, when I talk about what I talk about, you'll notice I don't get super emotional unless it's something that really triggers me hardcore. Okay. The reason why is because I've been working on this stuff within myself for over 20 plus years. Okay. I started doing my healing work in 95, 96. Okay. So in the next 4 years, it'll be over 30 years for me just doing the healing work. Okay. That's the first thing. Second thing, and again, this is very critical, right? The secondary part of this is, instead of worrying about, again, I am completely down for people talking about their testimonies and doing it in a constructive, healthy way, saying, this happened to me. This is what I've done to move on. This is what I've learned from it. This is also too what I see in the disclosure community. Look at Tony Rodriguez, right? Tony's a friend of ours. And
shout out to Tony.
Shout out to Tony. He has done a really great job at looking at what happened to him and trying to figure out how to move forward past it. Sure, he's talked about his testimony a lot, but and he still does too, by the way, folks. But the point is that he also says this is what we need to do going forward.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the exact same boat with our business, right? We both have been through this stuff. We both have
Yeah.
had, the triggers, the trauma, the targeting, all this stuff.
Yep.
But what we've chosen to do as a couple and as a business is to figure out how can we bring the skills we have to bear to help people not feel all that stuff anymore.
Yeah. One of the things, though, I want to point out, though, is that Will says, I've done 30 plus years of healing.
Well, will be in 2025.
I want to add, though, that he's still doing the healing. It's not like he just gets to this destination and he's like, I've done 30 plus years of healing. I'm good.
It doesn't stop.
No, it's a practice. So we literally have to keep doing it all the time because we're going to keep getting under those layers, the layers of the onion.
I'll use an example of what I'm talking about. This actually came up. We're back from our 20s. Some of our people are, yes. I want to talk about something that's an example of what I'm really getting at, right? So if you look at me, for example, right? I just had my session with my individual counselor today, right? Some things came up from my time when I was in the military, which was back in the early 90s, and it's still causing me to feel triggered and hurt and upset and ashamed and guilty and blah, 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 blah. Right? This is what happens when you are a combat vet. This is the kind of stuff you deal with. As I've mentioned previously, it's just layers of the onion. I've gotten this onion whittled down to the core of the onion. And for those of you who ever cook with onions, the outside of the onion has that nice flavor. The inside, not so much, but it still makes your eyes water. Well,
it can still make you cry.
It still make you cry. And that's exactly where I am with my layers of my onion. I'm at the core of it, but it's still making me cry with certain issues.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. It's so cleansing and clearing, though, at the same time.
So one of the things you've got to do, first off and foremost, take it easy on yourself. Give yourself some grace. Give yourself some just understanding. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have a crappy day. It is.
Oh, yeah.
We all go through them.
Not just a day. How about a week, a month? It's okay. Whatever you need. It's part of the process. And also, if you just let yourself, like Will said, give yourself some grace and just say, this is temporary, though.
Yeah.
A week, a day, a month, whatever time you need, it's all part of the journey. It's part of the process. It's part of your unique journey and growth, your spiritual growth.
And what you just said, Diana, that to me is where I was back in 95, 96. When the lady approached me, I've said this in my testimony, I believe, before, when Connie approached me, essentially she asked one very simple question. She says, do you want to get off alcohol? And I was like, well, yeah, of course I do. And then, of course, things rolled from there. I didn't realize that meant I was going to have to unpack, 22 years, 23 years of, my home life, why I drink, and all the crap that went on, including the program stuff, by the way. I didn't realize that little Pandora's box was going to get open the way that it did. But as I've said in my previous testimony, I'm eternally grateful to her for helping me open that box in a way that was healthy and constructive.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we have to do in our healing practice, right? Is figure out how do we open that in such a way that when people get the information, whether it be through a shamanic journey or through one of my sessions or through a joint session with Jodi and I both, how they take that information, how they unpack it in such a way that the information they get can help them start the integration healing process, right?
And it's like I always say to especially our clients and to the community, it is like a pebble in a pond with all those ripples. It's the quantum echoes. And you literally can also help your familial lineage forward and backward as far as the healing process. So you are helping your own DNA and just layers upon layers upon layers of that healing. I also want to point out that when we were talking about QHHT, Diana was also saying that she's done a session before and her SC also came in in third person and in that authoritative voice. That's also nice to hear her confirmation of that too. That's so interesting. I also want to point out that Sufi, who's on, she's also a vet. And so she's also I don't know how many other people are vets on here, but I know it's been so difficult for people who are vets to not only do healing from that aspect, but also do healing from other realms, that they've been through. So I commend you guys. You guys have been through so much. And Will shared just this heart-wrenching story with me this evening, and it made me cry. And my heart is just, I love this man so much. And I'm so proud of the healing work that he does and continues to
tough.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough when you're in a position where you're going through all of this stuff, right? Quote unquote stuff.
Yeah, Sufi says she was a vet in the 90s, and
Yeah.
she served, and she's still going through the healing.
Yeah,
And
I'm in the same boat, Sufi. I get you. I was a combat vet, as a Marine, and when you've been in those kind of situations, it's weird being back here in the civilian world for me sometimes, because even though I'm not in a combat zone anymore, there's still certain things that definitely set me off. Like if I'm startled when I'm asleep,
oh yeah.
or certain noises, I will immediately react to them. It's like not even like my brain doesn't even like have like that 10-second, hey, maybe you should talk and think in like a normal person kind of way.
Hey, would you mind being like quiet down there?
Yeah.
No.
My brain goes, whatever that is needs to stop the fuck right now. And except it comes out like totally wrong out of my mouth. So to those people who I may have just offended, I am sorry. So this is me being raw for a moment. Okay. I'm being transparent. I'm being raw because I'm learning the more transparent and raw I am, that apparently the more I cause other people to be that way.
Yeah.
So great.
We give permission to everybody as
Yeah.
we do it ourselves. So it's healing on both fronts.
But getting back to my original point, though, it does take a lot of internal conviction. It takes a lot of emotional depth to really want to do the healing work, because you've got to get really, really, really like into here and here and say, is this really what I want to do? Because you're gonna have to unpack all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, right, Diana, right?
Yeah.
You start getting neck deep in this stuff, and you're not in the kiddie end of the swimming pool anymore.
Nope.
You're in
the deep end.
You're in the deep end of the swimming pool, and you can't touch bottom.
Yep. But you know what? For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, or you don't know Will and I, welcome to Jodi's Gems, my channel, my show Guided.
Sharks.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And we have seen blood in that water, right?
Yep.
But
Chum.
yeah. My show Guided, helping you navigate your divine journey, is really about the hero's journey. It's based on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and my guests are from all around the world. And these beautiful guests really help put just their little flavor of helping people heal, helping humanity heal. A lot of them are practitioners, or they've had experiences where they were on one trajectory of their life and then something happened, something traumatic, or, a near-death experience like Will had, or a terminal illness, and then boom, their life changed. And that is the story that always intrigues me as well.
Let's talk about this just for a minute, right?
Before we do that though, babe, I also want to tell people about our healing practice. So services with Jodi and Will, we not only offer SIA sessions, which Will, tell us about SIA real quick.
It's basically just me connecting to your altars, my altars, and people up there who have keyboard level access. And basically I pull down records for people so I can tell them what's in their records.
If they were in the programs or not, secret space program.
A lot of times when I'm connecting to the altars themselves, that can get a bit sketchy, because sometimes altars don't want to tell the truth about what they've really done.
Because maybe they're a deep cover under there, or up there rather.
Yeah. So a lot of this stuff goes on. We're trying to find the truth. That's really what it's about, is trying to find what is that person's personal truth. Yeah. And we're talking about something that even the government themselves do not want to talk about, because for them to disclose it is technically against their clearance levels. So,
Yep. We also do things like chakra balances. We do auric field clearings. Yes, we do that. We also
Jodi
do.
does an awesome job with shamanic journeying.
Thank you, babe. I do. I do shamanic journeys. And what I love about that is the information that I can get for clients.
Yeah.
Whoa. Sometimes I get things that I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Wow. And then I'll go, babe, have you ever heard of this before? He's like, no, but that is really cool. But I've kind of heard of this, that, and kind of a nuance of that. We had one client, and he was part of an order of Taijeta, the order of Taijeta in existence, and it was similar to an ascended master in that order.
Yeah.
And I was just like, the things that like my spirit guides tell me on these journeys, it's just like, whoa. It's just like I cannot make that stuff up, you know. Maybe certain numbers significant to them will come. Various experiences come. A lot of times shamanic spirit guide animals for them will have different messages. So that's awesome. If anybody has maybe an etheric attachment, we can do removals for that.
Yeah.
If you go on to http:// and I think we even put it in the description.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and see the various services that we offer.
And we have a ton of divination services on there. We have a ton of healing services on there. Again, we're not healing you. We are helping facilitate you receiving your healing.
Yes, absolutely.
We do have other services like some of the channel stuff, some of the shamanic journeying stuff, some of the SIA stuff, of course. And when we get QHHT rolling, you'll see that on there as well.
I don't know if you know about this. Will does tarot as well.
Yeah.
And so I do intuitive tarot. So we also do a lot of numerology. So
and we do astrology.
So if you want to do any type of natal numerology, astrology type stuff within like a hybrid of your service, let us know.
You can actually check out, we have a service on there. It's called our coaching services. And underneath that coaching service, a lot of that stuff is covered. Specifically, if you guys are looking more so for either a copy of the recording, or if you want, say, a printout of your natal chart, we can do that while we're doing the service. Just make sure you also buy the download my service option on there, and we'll actually send that stuff to you. And the reason why we're kind of doing that is because of our service provider in terms of storage has been a bit picky about bitching about how much space we have, so we have to be kind of careful with that, right?
We'll be taking care of that though.
Yes. And the other thing I would say too, which is something that we're kind of gravitating or moving toward, is this idea that we're not limiting ourselves in terms of the services we provide. What we're trying to figure out and trying to help you guys figure out, right? All the people that have been kind enough to listen to us tonight, we're helping you guys figure out what is it that you need to help you.
Right.
Some folks may not ever want a tarot reading, but they totally dig astrology, or let's say they need energy work, and they don't feel they've ever been in the programs, right? It's stuff like this where we've got basically a modality.
We have like a spiritual smorgasbord that we offer, which is awesome.
But it's a modality that we have tons of modalities we can use to help you guys. And we're trying to put those out in such a way that everyone can get scheduled. For those people who are on already that have worked with us, you guys know how we do business.
Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Yeah,
we love our clients. So thank you.
We do love our clients, and we've been both fortunate and very blessed by our clients over the last year.
Yeah, around the world. It's been amazing. And sometimes it's like they either, have heard about us on social media, on our videos, or just word of mouth.
Or like Diane said, she saw us on Journey to Truth. And,
right.
And this is what happens a lot of times is we'll get on these videos and we're thinking, we're just talking with, in this case, it was Tyler and Aaron, who are going to be friends of ours.
Right.
We get on, we start talking with them. And it's kind of like, we're just going to sit down and chat with our friends for a little while. All of a sudden we have people contacting us saying, hey, we saw you on this video. Can we get some services with you? And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Then others are like, oh, we saw you on Dan Winter's show.
Yeah.
So it's really cool how people connect with us. Our client today said, oh, one of my friends sent me a link to you guys, and that's how I found out about you. He's also a QHHT practitioner. So it's just, we love how people get connected with us. And, we've had people from Canada, from China, from, oh gosh, Australia, like so many countries. It's just beautiful, all the people.
Here's something that is a goal of mine at some point. So we're going to do a video either from Dan Winter's house in France, or we're going to go when one of our friends goes to his house in Spain.
Yes, that'd be fun.
We are going to do that.
Yes.
That is my goal. That is my in my head. We're going to make that crap happen.
We'll come to you internationally.
We were going to come to you internationally on Facebook or YouTube Live and be like, flood out.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So when you were talking about goals, babe, for people, and as far as our modalities that we offer and things of that nature. So Diana was saying she would like to go deeper as far as when she does the QHHT modality, so that she can recall and just get into different things. Let's see. So she's like, start offering it.
Right. So here's
Thank you so much, Diana. We enjoy working with you too. And then Sufi says, oh, your stuff looks amazing. She'd like to go into past lives.
Hello.
Hi, guys. Okay, this is awesome. I love that everybody.
So here's what I will
commenting.
say. Here's what I will say really quickly, right? The number one issue when I've listened to folks outside of our lessons talk about hypnosis, QHHT, all this kind of stuff. What I've found is that people have weird ideas about hypnosis first off and foremost, and it tends to actually put them on guard because they believe that someone's going to try to do something nefarious to their subconscious, right? Dolores Cannon says this very clearly in our training stuff. She's like, you cannot do anything to the subconscious to harm that individual, because the subconscious will not allow it.
They will disconnect.
They'll disconnect from you.
Yeah, they will disconnect.
If it's not okay with the subconscious.
Because they protect that person, that client.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, folks, is so that you understand your subconscious is protecting your personality and the physical body. It's its job. It's also what the ego does when you're normally awake and in your personality. So, okay, so let's talk about this. I'm going to talk about this just for a minute, right?
Okay, go for it, babe. And by the way, thank you. I appreciate it. My hair looks beautiful. Thank you. Do we offer a sliding scale? That's what they want to know.
So,
for that. Well, let's tell her about the QHHT offering.
Okay.
As far as the love offering.
Okay,
let me
get to the ego stuff first, and then we'll jump back to QHHT.
We'll get to that question. Thank you for asking it.
Give us just a second here, because my brain is like a little gerbil trying to run in circles here. Because and the reason why I say that, folks, is if you can't tell, I'm a little run down today. I'm not sick, but I'm having some issues. So
he's just been low energy. Our schedule has been busy.
We have been slammed.
Yes.
So here's what I'm going to say on the ego front. When you think of the ego, first off and foremost, it's not a bad thing. The ego's job is to protect the personality and the physical body. But the problem is the ego is wired from past experience and fear. This is what Dolores Cannon calls Mr. Stupid. For a reason.
Yeah.
For a reason. Okay?
That's true.
Secondly, and more importantly, the phrase that I learned through Connie way back in the day, when she talked about ego, she said edging God out.
Mm-hmm. Love that acronym for ego.
That's one she came up with. I don't know where she got it from, but that's what I heard her say it.
It's also basically when we allow logic to take over our intuition.
Right. So with those two things in mind, when you go into a QHHT session, and Diana, you said you've had one, a few others have too. The idea behind QHHT is first off to get you comfortable, is to make it so that when you're in the session, you can sit down and talk with this person. You basically tell them, this is what's going on with me. This is what I want to have addressed during the session. You give them some past history, and then you go in and you actually conduct the session. Usually the way it works is they'll try to get you first off relaxed enough that you can go into theta state, which is the subconscious portion of the mind that she recommends working with, Dolores recommends working with, right? So you have beta state, which is awake.
Yes, I'm glad you're covering this. This is really intriguing.
Alpha state, by the way, so think about this, right? The U.S. Navy did a study And they actually found out that if they put this little cap to measure your EEG, your brain signals,
You
right?
vets out there are going to think this is really interesting.
What happens is if you were in alpha state for more than 60 seconds, meaning you're light trance, so it goes beta awake, alpha light trance, theta deep trance, delta asleep. Okay. Don't ask me why they're screwed up that way. Just don't. But if you were in trance in light trance alpha state for more than 60 seconds, what happens is it would shut the TV off. They found out that if you concentrated on music, television, your computer,
Driving,
this is a reason why they call it road hypnosis,
mm-hmm.
that you were actually in a light hypnotic state. Dolores Cannon basically said, I will not watch ads or anything on TV like that, because essentially they're trying to induce you to buy their products, and they know that you're hypnotically tranced.
Yeah, you're susceptible to programming.
Yes.
At that point.
So this is the reason why I basically don't watch TV anymore. Right, yeah, and written dreams, you bring up a very good point. Jose Silva has said this. I've heard others say this too. That when you're watching,
yeah,
you can watch TV, right? But the issue is what is actually going on with the ads. They know they can target you when you're weak because you're already in a suggestible state anyhow, right?
And aside from the ads, even the content, whether it's a movie, whether it's a series, I mean,
right.
What are you putting into your brain?
Right.
Into your DNA?
What do you put in the brain pan, right?
Right, exactly.
But the point is that anybody can go into a alpha state. You do this for 80% of your day while you're at work.
Can you believe that? 80% of our day is basically in that state.
You're in an alpha state, which means you're in a light hypnosis state all day long.
Unless you can basically talk to yourself and say, I am going to be conscious. So, yeah. What just happened there? I'm looking at the comments. I'm like, did something just turn off?
I don't know.
It says this message is held for review. I don't know what happened. That's weird. So something happened where YouTube didn't like some word, I guess. So
anyhow,
that was weird.
YouTube, you're not cool anymore.
No, you're not cool, YouTube. But let me just tell you this. Somebody brought up that they're excited. Oh, yes, it was Anne Marie. She says, I'm excited to meet you guys at the SSP conference. Yes, we are excited to meet you guys.
So we'll talk about them in just 1 second.
Yeah, because that's May 2nd through the 5th, 2022. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can find more information on that.
So again, most people are in a light trance state for 80% of their workday. And what happens is this, right? If you can get into a light trance state while at work, you can definitely go into QHHT.
Yes. And that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So if if there are people who are like, I can't be hypnotized, I can't go under.
The only people that Dolores says she has problems with, and it's not that they can't be hypnotized, is that it takes her longer to get their left brain out of the way, right?
The Mr. Stupid
stuff, right? To get Mr. Stupid ego out of the way. She said it just takes longer because what happens is that she has to convince that person that when they go under, it's safe, and that's the number one thing that she has to do is make sure that person understands that while they're under, she can't make them do anything her subconscious does not want done to them.
Interesting. Okay, talking about synchronicities. Okay, this is a synchronicity right now. Today, while I was getting ready before the premiere of the episode with Sky Nelson Isaacs, okay, I was thinking about a gentleman that I had not heard from forever, okay? His name is Will Ho Sun. Guess who shows up right now in the comments? Will Ho Sun, welcome. I have not heard from you forever. And I'm like, where has he been? How is he? What is he doing? Because he has been such a supporter in this community forever. And thank you so much for your support, by the way, in the disclosure community, in the healing community, in the spiritual community, in the consciousness community. And so it's so interesting. Synchronicities, right? It's like when you're thinking about somebody and the phone rings and you're like, hey, I was just thinking about you. So anyway,
there are no coincidences,
right? Exactly. So but back to SSP conference.
So let's talk.
And Diana says she's going to be there as well. That's awesome.
So let's talk about SSP conference for a little bit, right? Journey to Truth is putting on Um, okay,
Oh, he deleted his Facebook. That's why. No
that's,
wonder.
that's why. So, as a side note, I've thought of the same thing, Will Hosan. I'm just saying, I have thought about it.
Don't blame you.
We don't blame you. But what I would say is that we're having Journey to Truth is having a conference.
They're hosting it. They're awesome.
It's in Grafton, Illinois,
Mm-hmm.
May 2nd to 5th, 2022.
You could get tickets, though, if you don't already have them. secretspaceconference.com.
That's correct.
Yep.
And
if you can't go, though, you can get tickets to have it streamed or online.
I was going to say they are streaming all I think it's 3 days or 4 days of the conference, right?
It's going to be very robust with lots of amazing speakers as well.
The two of us,
yes,
we will be speaking on the first day.
So excited.
Very excited. I also believe that they're talking about having us speak on a couple of panels as well. So we'll be speaking on the QHHT panel. We'll be speaking on the SSP panel and a few others. But the point is that we're going to be there, and we're also there to help support the community as well, right? Because we have friends like Tony Rodriguez and Jackie from Tony's show. They'll both be there. The guys from Journey to Truth who are running the show, who are friends of ours.
Tyler and Aaron
will both be there. So yeah, we'll have a bunch of people there who they'll all be trying to talk about subjects that can be a little difficult, tenuous to discuss, but they're good in terms of getting things out into the public, right?
Yep. And I feel like, things regarding disclosure are really starting to open up more and more and more. It's like the trickle effect.
Well, I mean, for a good example, right? Let's look at ATIP, right? When that stuff finally broke loose in the news, that was kind of like, that to me was like the litmus test. The government was trying to see how does the populace actually react to this, right?
How are they reacting? What's their response?
Look at what happened with Nelson, the guy that runs NASA right now, right? He comes out in a news conference when he's in Virginia and basically says, we believe there's aliens out there, and oh, by the way, we're just trying to figure out where they are, and we understand that they don't want to talk to us. He said this.
Oh my goodness!
He said this as director of NASA. He said this. So
that confirms so much.
You had the space director for the Israeli government came out. He said pretty much the same thing, except he went further.
The Israelis have been saying stuff for a long time.
But he came out and basically said, we do have colonies on Mars. We do have colonies on the moon. We already have a fleet of ships up there, blah, 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 which, again, he's confirming the SSP stuff, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of people that have been saying this stuff. And I think what's happening is we're getting to the point where I think we're almost at a tipping point where they're not going to be able to hold this back any longer. The governments will not be able to hold this back. At some point, that's when you're going to see either the aliens are going to land and say, oh, hey, by the way, we're here, or more importantly, disclosure will happen, and then they show up. So
I'm going to write in the comments real quick. I'm going to have Will, while I'm doing that, we have had some really unique things show up in certain sessions with SIA, speaking of SSP stuff. We're, of course, not going to disclose the client's names
or
alters, anything like that because of confidentiality. Right. But, in your opinion, what surprised you? What kind of was like, whoa, I didn't know that was happening? Maybe even about clone stuff.
Yeah, we had.
While he's doing that, I am going to put in the comments where you can find our healing practice and also where you can find us on Facebook and all of that jazz.
So, the topic that came up today with our client, he had an altar that altar worked for ICC. The altar was in fact a medical person that worked for them, and more importantly, that individual worked at the facility on Mars and the facility on Ganymede, which creates a lot of the sleeves that are used in the programs. And when this altar was telling me this stuff, he also showed me a picture of what this cloning facility looks like, right? And that cloning facility essentially just looked like a large, super huge warehouse. And it was like also 20 layers thick of just these tanks of clones. And what he basically said was JW. There you go.
My fingers aren't typing right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Okay, there we go.
So he basically showed this picture to me, the Ultra did, of this super huge, super deep building of just rows and rows of tanks of sleeves and altars. And what that basically means is that there's two things they're talking about there. One, they're talking about trying to develop a clone that doesn't have to die. Meaning,
which that is a new thing. And was it like programs? Were you going to bring those up too?
No.
Okay.
So what she's asking about is the actual program name. That's for the client themselves to work through. I don't want to get knee deep into that without authorization from the client. But the other thing, two things got brought up. Again, one was the trying to create a clone that wouldn't die, right, under its own cause. In other words, if you have an ultra transferred there and your natural body dies, you rehome to the clone. Okay. Secondly, and more importantly, the other project was really directly Project Lazarus, which people have heard me talk about. Mm-hmm. This is for those of us who've been in the programs, and them actually, when they decide to do the recall, will actually have a 2.0 body to step into. And it came right up in the middle of this client session. We're both like, oh. So, yeah.
Yeah. Also, there's been a trend, and I know with QHHT, this can be really unique too, because in QHHT, when you have a ton of clients around the world getting the same information, take note. But this has been coming up in a lot of our client sessions too.
Yeah, and Council of Five.
The Council of Five. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so there are five species. The three big ones that make up the two big ones that make up the Council of Five is the Emerther and the Radan, right? And there are many sources you can go to look this up. By the way, the ARB, the Alien Race book, the Russian Alien Race book, Lena Don's book, Gift from the Stars. There's quite a few of them that when those books came out, essentially they described what this Council of Five is, right? And essentially it's these five species. It was 9 at one point, but it stepped down to 5 because these 5 decided to stick with the agreement. And what that agreement is that they wanted to clear a path energetically for humans to be able to develop or completely destroy themselves all on their own and without outside intervention. And the problem is that we have Draco, we have Matra, we have Zeta Reticulans, all these very negative species that are in fact influencing us here. So the Council of Five has gotten very active about either putting their people here, which is what happened with this individual. He was actually a member of that soul group, or more importantly, they try to influence people down here. They'll talk with government officials. They'll talk with heads of state. They'll talk with secretaries. They'll talk with people in their militaries, basically trying to convince them that you don't need to go this route, meaning war, desolation, devastation, destruction, right? A lot of times when you hear people talk about these craft that are neutralizing nuclear weapons, it's more often than not a Council of Five vehicle. I'll bet money on it because they don't want us using nuclear weapons on each other. So
really fascinating. One of the things I did want to bring up, because one of our other clients, she talked about how she had, or she felt she had this connection with the Draco. And I immediately thought, that doesn't seem like her energy. That just doesn't. And I asked her, I said, okay, are you meaning dragons or are you meaning the Draco? And so
let's be genetically clear on a few things here.
Yes.
And energetically clear on a few things. You can be a dragon and not be a Draco.
Right.
We were talking when I use that phrase specifically, and I describe the queen as looking like a dragon. That does not mean she's a dragon. She has the physical appearance of being a dragon, meaning she is a royal white Sakar, which is what that species is called. Okay, the Alpha Draconans, right? They come from Thuban, that system. Okay. Now, when we talk about dragons specifically, there are etheric creatures And there are etheric beings who take on the form of a dragon, who are in fact not draconian. They're not alpha draconian. They're not Sakar, and they're very positive beings.
They're actual light energy,
Yeah.
and they are related and associated to the Kumara clan from Venus. And so she's like, "Oh yeah, no, it's dragons, like those beings, you know." And
So
she said, I've had like positive relations with like these blue dragons,"
yeah,
and I was like, "Okay,
look
that's what I feel.
when you look at the
You have
Chinese
that connection
when you
with."
look at the Chinese communities, right? Specifically, they use this phrase "luck dragons," right? These luck dragons essentially are these very positively aligned, trying to help humankind out, draconic species that are not Draco. Also, too, I mean, even with the Draco, there are reptilian and Sauron species that are not Draco that are very positive. You have to understand 95% of the alien species out there are actually very positive. It's this 5% that we keep kind of looking at and going, why do we keep bumping into this 5%? Well, that's because we haven't changed our vibrational density, people.
Again, mirroring, right?
We're mirroring, we're seeing the mirrored collective hurt because they're fourth density. We're seeing that collective negative energy from them, and we're drawing that to us to heal that in us.
Yeah. I like what Wilhel's son said. He says, very interesting and edifying as a red dragon soul myself.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you've heard me say this before, Wilhel's son, but I actually, in my SSP experience, I had training with the green dragons.
Mhm.
And it
Which
was,
we'll get into at some point.
yeah, I'll get into that with my testimony and everything. But it was interesting when I had this recall because I knew that part of my training, I went into like this Himalaya area, and it was this very stealth group, very elite group. And it was the Green Dragons, and I trained with them in my like teens as an adolescent. And so I had never heard of the Green Dragons. And
Mhm.
so I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, there are Green Dragons. There is a group.
It calls themselves that.
Yeah, that calls themselves that. So it's very interesting. So anyway, so yes, there are very good dragon beings that are not related to the Draco at all. So that client was like, "Oh, okay, that makes me feel a whole lot better." Plus, I remember, probably a lot of you do remember, Puff the Magic Dragon and Pete's Dragon and all of that.
Well,
They were all very mystical and magical and
so
very positive,
the
right?
one that my sister still loves and her dog looks a lot like is out of Never Ending Story.
Oh, yes,
That's her,
Valcor.
Falcor,
Yeah,
yes.
Valcor.
So yeah, it's one of those things where it's kind of like she has her own personal Falcor who looks like her dog now. But it's
That's
funny.
too
It's
funny.
funny because Freya does look like her. So I guess the next subject I had written down here.
We'll have to do something. Will Hosan is saying he'd like more information on the different dragon families. We'll have to
Okay.
go into that.
We'll have to get into that later.
Yeah.
Son. Right now we don't. We have like we're 100 about hour and 23 minutes into this, and we don't have time for that, right?
Yeah, but I love that topic. It's so fascinating to me because we've talked about yellow dragons, we've talked about green dragon group, red dragon, and white. Yep. Let's talk about a couple more things. One including your NDE. So your near-death experience. Okay, it's so beautiful. You may have heard some of it on other interviews that he's done, but
we will be doing an episode where we talk about
like the full series and everything.
Where we'll be talking about Jodi and I's spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we're going to be getting into more detail. Again, we don't really have a whole lot of time to kind of dig into this, but yes, I did go through an NDE. On top of the actual medical issues I was having, there was also some chemical issues, which ironically the universe kind of mirrored a second time to me to learn about 4 years later in 2016. So when I had a stroke in 2016, And essentially, in both cases, I had a chemical that made it really hard for the medical people to work on me while trying to fix the issue. Oh, hey, there's Alex. So awesome.
Hi, Alex.
So
It says, "Hey, Will and Jodi, great to see you. So
yeah,
good to see
yeah,
you.
great to
Thanks for
see you.
joining us."
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it's one of these things where it's really hard to talk about the NDE stuff, but we will do that in one of our episodes. That's going to happen because one of the things we want to talk about is how do we get from where we started out spiritually to where we are now, and where we plan on going, right?
Mhm.
And that's something we need to cover. I think it'd be interesting to let people see that development. I
Yeah.
think.
One of the things that was not just a synchronicity, but I think was really kind of unique for me is Jesus is a guide for me, and Will wanted somebody who put Jesus at the center of their life, but
Yeah.
also spirituality at the center of their life. Um, and so it was interesting because I had found out that I had 2 tumors on my pituitary gland, and I was going through an MRI one day, and Jesus, like, appeared on one side of my MRI bed or whatever, that machine, and he's like, "You can't come home yet. It's not your time. You still need to, learn about love and relationships." And he said, "But I'll help you." And this is before I met Will. And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." So literally 3 months later, I meet Will. I see him on an interview and I'm like, "I want him on my show, number 1. And number 2, I know him." And I started having recalls about him. And I'm like, I know him, I recognize him. This is
Yeah.
wild. So that all came about. I had an NDE when I was 5, and that NDE was more along the lines of
Thank you, Diana.
my kind of spiritual ET soul group helping me stay incarnated in this life. So that was an interesting experience. We'll get into more of that. I kind of said a little more, I think, on Journey to Truth and Dan Winter's show a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say one nuance that I found really intriguing, though, is in Will's NDE, he had a different view of colors and sound and frequencies as far as just the tapestry and choir of humanity that I often talk about. Because I tell you guys, everybody has a signature note, a signature frequency vibration. And we all play that in the choir of humanity, as far as helping others heal, helping ourselves heal, and then emanating that light so that we can all heal. And he was able to kind of see that on a really beautiful level.
On what Jody's talking about was there was one part of my NDE where Archangel Michael and Jesus and I walked through each section of the temple that looked like a very large version of the Temple of Solomon. And as we walked through the outer courtyard and the middle courtyard into the Sanctum Sanctorum, I didn't actually step to the door of the Sanctum Sanctorum, but looking in, I could see the Divine Creator sitting on the throne. Around the outside, like the door jamb of the door, was these rays of light kind of coming out past me. And it was a very weird feeling because it was like I was watching, I could see each beam of light like independently as a beam of light. And each beam of light had its own chorus, it had its own notes, it had its own song. But each individual beam was all doing the same thing, all giving credence and praise to the Divine Creator.
Isn't that beautiful?
And they all had a separate like rainbow, and they all had their own like little like color hues inside of each beam of light. They were all different. And I remember actually asking Jesus. I said, "Can I go and meet my Divine Creator?" And he said, You can't do that yet." And I said, "Well, why can't I do that yet?" And he's like, "Because once you go in there, you don't come back from that. You're returning to source. You're returning to your Divine Creator Father." And he goes, "You're not ready for that yet. There's too much that you have left to do down there."
He still had to meet me.
Yeah. And so after some long conversations, I did return to Earth. I met my ex-wife, and as I was getting divorced and getting out of that situation, Jody and I, we were already friends, we were already chatting, but we ended up striking up a relationship ourselves. And yeah, it's been an interesting ride since then.
It has
So
been so transformational.
yeah. So
Because as
what?
Will has told you, he has healed from a lot of like family of origin things, a lot of trauma from
Yeah.
the military, a lot of like programming things. And then I have also healed from a lot of family of origin things. Um,
Yeah.
which and relationship stuff. In fact, there was a Sufi, I don't know if you're still on here, but she knew one of my exes, and all the
Okay.
trauma that I went through. Oh my gosh. And that was a very difficult period. And the trauma, oh gosh. And I seem to keep manifesting somehow because I hadn't learned the lesson yet, right?
This gets
Um,
back to my earlier discussion.
yeah, I hadn't learned
Our earlier discussion.
yeah, I hadn't learned the lesson yet.
Mm.
I kept manifesting the same type of dudes that would like lie and cheat. And it's like, okay, what is that saying? Okay, we were talking about before the mirroring, right?
Yeah.
What is that saying? What do I need to ask myself? Where am I lying to myself? Where am I cheating myself? Okay.
Or what are you cheating yourself out of?
Right, exactly. What aspect am I cheating myself out of? Am I lying to myself about maybe being happy? Or, am I lying to myself about being in a certain job that I'm saying I maybe need to get out of instead of staying in, all sorts of things. So I
Yeah.
really had to do some self reflection. So, yeah, all that journey to leading up to where we are now. So, yes, it's been quite interesting.
Another important psychological term that comes up quite a bit, both with our healing practice and the SSP stuff, and with people we just talk to in general, by the way. There's a word I recommend if you guys want to know why people have such an issue doing this sort of stuff and talking about it. It boils into a simple phrase called cognitive dissonance. That phrase is very important for you guys to study because a lot of times what will happen is it's basically when the image you have of the world in your head does not match the actual image of the real world. And many people have this issue because they are trained by the media, they're trained by their academia, they're trained by their job, they're trained by their parents to believe the world looks a certain way. And in reality, it's not that way. This is where people start having psychological issues. It causes them stress, it causes them physical pain, it causes them mental anguish, and all kinds of stuff because the way that people think the world is isn't the way it really is.
Or maybe, they wake up one day and they have this epiphany and they're like, oh my gosh, everybody's been lying to me my whole life.
If you ever had that particular moment that Jody's talking about, you've had cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm. But the beauty of that moment,
You've also been in denial, but it's a different issue.
the beauty of that moment, though, is that you have like this blank slate of like, okay, so now what?
Right.
Now what am I going to do? I get to create this whole new adventure, this whole new life on my terms. How do I see the world now without this lens of programming, family of origin, whatever,
And more to the point, by the way, just so we're clear about this, when people finally have that moment, that is exactly when they start coming to people like us, like Jody and I.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden they realize, okay, there's a lot of crap I've got to work on because I've now got this bag of karma, and bag of stuff and junk to work through.
Mm-hmm.
I need help. And that's where they come to people like us. And practitioners in general are willing to help people work through this stuff. But the people who have the bag of karma also have to be willing to work through it too.
Yeah. Let me remind you, though, that even if you've had that moment of my whole life has been a lie, we on some level have agreed to that blueprint because of that one huge awakening moment
Yeah.
that will launch us even further. It's like that's a catalyst moment. That is a portal of power that is going to be a complete transformative moment for
Yeah.
us as well. So, when you have those moments, at first you might look back or you might look at that moment and be like, oh my gosh, my whole life was a waste. Like, oh my gosh, I haven't been doing what I was meant to do, or my purpose is
So
lost. But that's not true. It's actually now like, okay, here, my life is starting. Let's go.
the 1 thing I think of was when I had that initial interaction with Connie, because my life had been on a downward spiral trajectory for a while. And then I meet her, and then it's like, well, you don't have to live this way anymore. You don't have to be this way anymore. You don't have to think this way or have this programming in you anymore.
And even that can be stressful because a lot of people, when they wrap themselves around a certain identity, right, or a
Right.
certain life, they're like, what does that mean? What
Yeah.
am I supposed to do with that?
And what Jody's trying to say, no, I'm gonna be blunt about it because I don't worry about what people think. I just don't.
Another reason I love him.
I just don't. If people think I do, well, you're wrong. So sorry. One of the things that I find that people tend to get wrapped up in is, especially when they get wrapped up in this like victimhood mentality, when they get wrapped up in people have done something to me and whatever that is. Like, think of the number of people that we all know, all the people on this channel know, who wrap themselves up in this idea of I am ... and insert whatever medical issue they happen to have. That's taking on an identity that is not who you truly are. You are a created spiritual being walking around in a meat suit. That's who you really are. Once you get down with that, all this other stuff is not you.
Yep. Very true.
Right, exactly. Written Dreams just brought up a really good example of what I'm talking about. Exactly. The idea is that when you take on the identity of something that is not you, meaning, for example, you could say that the identity is, for example, if you look at Carolyn Miss, she created this archetype, card set in her book, right? I recommend, by the way, that's another great example of looking at what I'm talking about, right? So she has examples in there of like what they call prostitutes, right? And not someone who's selling their sex for whatever. Yes, emulate versus emanate. Thank you. But in Carolyn Miss's book, right, you can say you're diabetic and you have diabetes. That's different. Correct. Yes. You can say that you have a certain medical issue, but it's not who you are.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to wrap your identity around it.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're a spiritually created being. This is an emanation of the divine creator. Plain and simple, right? Now, the second part of this that I want to say really quickly is how many people, like when we are doing our job as practitioners, right? We see this all the time where someone will come in and they'll say, well, I had this certain issue, ... whatever that is. And instead of saying, I'm trying to work through or process this issue, the issue actually becomes like part of their identity, right? We've seen this in discussion groups, even where people try to include us in certain discussion groups. And by the way, for those of you on Facebook, if you ever include Jodi and I in a discussion group, you will get truth and it might hurt your feelings. So just saying. Because,
or we might leave it because there's too much trauma and drama or people marinating in that, instead of saying, I'm actually throwing out the idea of a solution.
So here's the thing, right? So,
or here's how I want to heal.
Here's basically what I'm really getting at the core of this, right? My truth is that every single soul on this planet is here to experience life and bring that back to the divine creator whenever you join source. That's what we're here to do. Whatever meat suit you happen to be in is not the point. The point is you're here to learn a lesson.
And help people. And what's interesting about that is even Dolores Cannon with QHHT says that 99.9% of clients always say when the question is posed, what is my purpose? What is my mission?
You're here to help people.
You're here to help people. And in some way, shape, or
Now,
form, it has to do with healing as well.
now here's the
And
thing.
everybody has like a gift of healing in a unique way.
Here's something else that she says too. She says, when you're up there, up in heaven, and you, before you reincarnate, you might choose someone who's your best friend to be your enemy while you're down here because they know you the best. When you finally go back up there and they join you up there, they're like, hey, I did a pretty good job being your enemy, right? And the thing is you guys are both okay with it. It's like, yeah, you did teach me some lessons down there. That's what should be happening when we're down here, right? Now, my sister brought up a very good point, and I'm going to bring this up really quickly. The difference between a best friend helping you learn the lessons down here.
So here's the caveat.
The difference between a best friend learning the lessons with you down here and teaching you those lessons is they're teaching you how to love. Whereas if you have someone who chronically always plays the bad guy and doesn't give a shit about how you feel or think on a soul level,
Or your progression.
that person is a 3D, and their 3D soul is not learning the lesson down
Like
here.
parasitic.
I have a parent like this, so I'm just saying there is a difference between those two, and you as the individual have to figure out which one are you, which one are they, right?
Which one are they?
And more importantly, who are you really focusing on to learn the lessons through, right? So, like in my case, Jodi and I, we've had many millions of years of lives together, and we didn't realize that until I had done a channeling one night, and I actually connected with our soul group, and that soul group started talking through me to both of us, to the point that I was crying and she was crying, and we're all like, like going into that mode. And we're trying to like take
It
notes.
was so powerful though. We were like so overcome with emotion.
Yeah.
He could barely talk, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
So yeah, and right. So Mahip's talking about the churn in life right now, right? So that churn, by the way, Mahip.
Yeah.
When you're
it is profound shifts indeed.
When you're in that space, that is the universe asking you, what do you truly resonate at with your core? What do you truly resonate with? Because those profound shifts are essentially shifting out energy that you no longer need. And the universe is basically saying, do you need a tower card moment? Do you need us to help you shift? Right? And trust me, when they do it, it hurts your butt a lot more than you doing it. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Babe, you crack me up.
Trust me. If you look at the picture of the tower card and people jumping off the tower, you can do it with a parachute, or you can have them kick you in the rear end off the tower. That's the way. That was how. By the way, this is a little funny side story. That's how I did my first military jump. By the way, I did not want to go out the door, but the instructor behind me hit me in the butt with his boot.
He's like, you're going.
He's like, you gotta go, son. And here I am, like, oh, So,
wow, that's some trauma right there. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was down at Fort Benning. So,
oh my gosh.
As I was saying, though, there is a difference between you choosing to make the change and the universe basically kicking your seat of your pants, pushing you out the door, right?
Yeah. Also, I call that either you choosing to change and change your situation, or the universe compelling you to be humble and to change, right? And that's when the tower card will come. That
one word that she just said is extremely important. Humble. Humility. Because when that tower comes down, I went through my divorce from my ex. That is exactly what that whole situation taught me, was humility. A lot of humility. You will see things that when you get divorced, you will see things happen in people who you thought were quote unquote friends that, nope, they were not your friends. They will say things and do things that you just can't possibly shake your, all you can do is just shake your head and be like, what? But it teaches you humility. It's like, I have to be thankful for the things I have. I have to be thankful for my divine creator. I have to be thankful for what's coming into my life, because I'm making room for new things to come into my life now. And that's exactly what happened with us. It's like, by doing that, I created space for something better to come into my life, which is my current wife. Jodi is my wife, and I love her dearly. And That's how we ended up getting together, was after I got divorced. So, but the idea is again, it teaches you humility. And
Hmm.
never forget, this idea of forgiveness, acceptance, love, humility, mercy, compassion,
Grace.
grace. Oh my God, grace is a big one.
Especially for yourself.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Because if you have
Show
grace
you-
for yourself, you're also going to have grace for others.
When I see people, and I'm speaking as someone who was a kind of a rageaholic when I was younger, okay? When I see people who are angry a lot of times, what that tells me is they do not have compassion, forgiveness, mercy for themselves. We should be asking the question, what is it in you that makes you want to react that way toward other people? What is the pain and trauma that you've been through that puts you in a position where that's how you have to react to people?
And
Right?
oftentimes it's like you are so self-critical, and that is usually
Because they've never been shown forgiveness or mercy or compassion.
and that was going to be my next point. It's often because of either a parent that was super critical,
Yeah.
or there was a lot of trauma in family of origin,
Yeah.
where you grew up. And then that's perpetuated onto you. You then become self-critical and you're like, oh, well, I'm dumb or stupid, or I don't deserve this, or I'm not worthy of this. And it's just, it's yucky.
And by the way, this is where also too, for those of us in the programs, this is where some of this stuff will creep in, by the way. So for example, you look at like gamma level programming, right? And we'll probably talk about this when we start doing our videos, but one of the things you have to look at is gamma level programming is one of these insidious sections of the psyche that essentially says you can't survive without your family, you can't survive without your church, you can't survive without your political establishment, you can't survive without certain government people, you can't survive without assistance, you can't survive without whatever, right? What that particular programming is trying to destroy is the idea that all you have to do is be. Every single time for me, this stuff comes up, when it does show up, I have to think, the only thing I have to do is be. That's it. Mahatma Gandhi said this, Buddha said this, Muhammad said this, Moses and Abraham both said this, even Jesus said this. All you have to do is be.
Yeah.
And we as humans oftentimes forget this simple idea.
Yeah. We become human doings instead of
human beings.
Yep. Yep. Well, we have absolutely loved this time with you. And I'm so excited to introduce my lovely husband on my channel for the first time on Jodi's Gems. And for those of you who have not subscribed to Guided, to my show, and who have not watched some of the amazing episodes, because I have guests from all over the world, I would love for you to do that. I invite you to do that. I invite you to subscribe to Jodi's Gems. And again, we are going to have more of these, and we're going to have more shows with,
me.
Yes. So you're going to hear more about his NDE. You're going to hear more about the programs. We have like a laundry list of things that we've come up with that we're going to do actual videos and episodes on. We also asked the question on Instagram. We only had 3 responses. So if you don't know about our Instagram, go to it. Services Jaw. Okay. And that's for Jodi and Will, in case you didn't know.
The thing that she's talking about, by the way, when you let the video play, you have the video segment play all the way through at the very end.
Stories, the Instagram stories.
Right. It gets to the end of the section. It says, is there something that you would like us to talk about in our videos, right? Please click on that, because a lot of times people, they don't know how to get a hold of us. They don't know how to ask questions to us. And I want to cover this really quick, by the way, just super, super quick.
And I'll actually put our email as well.
Yeah.
So what I've put on here so far is I've put our Facebook, I've put our Instagram, I've put our Square site for our services with Jodi and Will. And I'm going to put our email if you want to get a hold of us that way as well. Okay, go ahead, babe. Sorry.
The original Johan Fritz email, that email is now gone, just so everyone's aware. You want to email it to this email that she's typing in here right now, the Jodi11 and Will3@gmail.com. That's our joint email. We both see it. We both do respond to it. And so yeah, so if you guys have questions, if you want to ask us questions, please feel free to reach out and hit us on email, or you can get a hold of us on Facebook or Instagram, or if we're in a live like this, either on Facebook or on YouTube, you can reach out to us there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is awesome. I'm so glad that we got a chance to do this on my channel for the first time. This is awesome. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We loved your comments. And in fact, since we have like maybe a few seconds more, if you do know what you'd like us to talk about more, let us know in the comments. Okay. I mean, we did get, of course, a lot of people saying SSP, but if there's a particular modality, about healing, that you'd like us to go into, or how we do our healing, we'd love for you to ask that question.
We will be discussing QHHT and hypnosis in a little more detail later on, because again, we get these questions all the time from people like, well, I don't know if that's really going to work for me, right? I don't know if that's really going to help me out, right?
Yeah.
So trust us. I mean, we're learning at the feet of the master. Dolores
and Julia Cannon. Yeah. Right. We also, I will add that on Facebook group.
This one is going to be covered.
Yes.
So
yes, glad you brought that up.
Let's talk about this for a minute, right? We are getting ready to turn up our actual courses on Thinkific website. We will be putting the link to that on all of our social media, so you guys can find it. And one of the classes we're actually talking about is exactly this divine counterpart relationships versus the twin flame versus soulmate stuff, right? Okay, so Miriam's asking the question, how do you address family of origin trauma, and what are the different modalities, right?
Yeah.
The number one method we will be using going forward will be QHHT, right?
Yeah.
But we also do
in the coaching session, though, we do a hybrid of various modalities all together, interlaced.
We do the coaching sessions, we do life coaching, spiritual coaching, all kinds of stuff there. We do energy work, which can address some family of origin trauma, especially stuff that's been embedded.
So let me tell you about what that looks like. So oftentimes a client will come in and say they have like a half hour to an hour coaching session. What that will look like if it's a hybrid is we will look at their energy. And oftentimes we'll say your name 3 times, like your whole name. And we do that to gauge where their energy is right then and there. Okay. Where's their energy, vibration, frequency right then and there. Okay.
And what does their auric field look like when they're saying it?
So we'll see their auric field. We'll see if there's anything hindering it, stifling, all of that. We'll look at their chakras. We'll then see various things that are going on. We'll see if there's any etheric attachments. We will also get channeled messages for them. And oftentimes we'll see if there's pain in their body. And that will then tell us, oftentimes, if it's family of origin, especially if it's on the left side, because that has to do with past and the feminine.
Yeah.
And if that has to do with a mother, a grandmother, that familial line. If it's on the right, it has to do, and again, left is receiving and feminine. Right, it has to do with moving forward in your life.
Or inability to move forward.
Yes, or inability to move forward, or the masculine, or, just that Athena energy, warrior energy.
Something else I'll say really quick too is there is a difference between choosing a general coaching session where we go off of spiritual guidance and you choosing a specific modality that you want for your session. So what I mean by that is if you choose a general coaching session, we're going to go off of what we're being guided to do over the course of that time period, right? That allotted time period. If you choose, for example, a tarot card session, it's 30 minutes to an hour, we're going to stick strictly on the tarot cards and the channel information that comes through that.
However, we will say, okay, what is your objective?
Right.
What are your questions?
Yep.
What do you want to accomplish? That's also what I do for my shamanic journeys. Yep. Usually if somebody says I want a half hour, that will usually allow me to do 1 to 3 questions. And then what I do, and this is very unique for this particular service, it's not done in any other services. After I do a shamanic journey for somebody, I then put in an email everything that I've received. After that, I then do a call with them and we discuss it together. and Will does too.
Yeah, and
He gives his insights as well.
so with the SIA sessions, I will pre-channel everything, well, at least a big chunk of it before we get into the session, because it just takes too long to try to get it all done in a format that makes sense because it's all coming into me jumbled sometimes. But what happens is, like I said, if someone decides, let's say for example that someone wants a tarot card reading, right? If they chose a 15-minute session, that'd be one question. If you chose 30 minutes, that would be two questions, or we could get really in depth on that one question, right? An hour, you're looking at probably 2 to 3 really in depth questions and really drilling down stuff, right? That's the way typically I gauge time with services, just so everyone's aware. And again, we have so many modalities that we can do that there is something there for everybody. And the other thing I would say too is that for those of you guys who are new to some of this stuff, you should check out what actually kind of works for you, right? We do offer some of the smaller priced services because we know that people can't afford the longer sessions sometimes, but they do need the help, which is why we've been doing that. The other side of it is that as we start bringing up QHHT and start bringing up some of these higher end services, which we consider QHT a premium service for us, you're going to see Jodi doing these services for folks. I'll be doing them as well. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out how do we help the collective, right? We know that by allowing people to hear their own voice, which is what QHHT is about, you're being healed by the sound of your own voice.
You're accessing all that information.
Yep.
And I would say, as far as, not being able to afford, I would say more like you're just curious to know, what actually do I need? What would you guys say? So you're kind of doing like a consulting session.
We do have consulting sessions on. There's a 30-minute session on the minute charge, right? If you calculate by the minute, it is the cheapest session we have. But typically, we don't provide services in a consulting session. What we'll do is we'll say, are you a good match for us, basically, right? And this is where we figure out what works for the client, what works for us. And we'll usually recommend certain services to the client as we're chatting with them on the consultation, right?
Yep.
So.
Yep. All of you guys have had great questions, great comments. I can feel the support and love. So thank you so much. This has just brought great energy to this channel. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And you will see more of this. So again, have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. And much love to you. We will see you soon.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you for supporting us.
Yes, absolutely.